Have you ever been playing Fate Grand Order, the hit mobile game, and just been kind of sitting there and finding yourself thinking this thought of, yeah, this game is really good and all, but what if I really didn't have to use my brain at all? Well, Delightworks actually heard those pleas from some of the player base, and they were like, you know what? Apparently, Arjuna Altar and like all of the Buster meta and everything, Scotty farming, it wasn't brain dead enough. So what if we just drop a servant by the name of Super Orion who literally allows players to just shut their brain off and look at big, disgusting amounts of massive big boy crit numbers? And that's where we find ourselves today. Because if you're watching this video, that means Super Orion is now out on the NA version of the game, unless you're watching this like a few weeks after this video came out, in which case I guess you just missed Super Orion, which is super unfortunate. But yeah, the title pretty much speaks for itself. Super Orion is pretty much in that must summon category of characters because he is absolutely disgustingly good, and we're going to talk about him in today's video. Before we begin though, what are you doing, boys? I upload FGO videos every single day, and all I ask for in return is a like on the video and a subscribe to the channel. It really helps your boy out. We just hit 12k and we're slowly inching our way to 100k, so every bit of support greatly helps me out. If you really like what I do and you just can't wait for the next daily upload and you just need that next bit of content to satisfy that itch, well, I have two things for you. In the description down below, I have my Twitch where I stream on weekdays, although your boy is a college student. So even though I like to say I'm going to stream every weekday, I may or may not miss a day out of the week sometimes. And if I do, just know I'm dealing with a lot of homework. The other is if you click that join button, you gain access to hidden content for channel members. Right now, it's really just like commentated challenge quest videos, but eventually channel members will be getting their own exclusive content. And by exclusive, I mean like exclusive servant reviews or maybe even like exclusive tier lists or top fives or something along those lines. And then finally, because I know a lot of people are going to be summoning for Super Orion, this is the best chance to go sign up for Loot Cakes, who I'm affiliated with. It is absolutely free, and by signing up for Loot Cakes, you basically earn points for every purchase you make in Fate Grand Order. But because I'm affiliated, I have my own little group, clan, whatever you want to call it, with Loot Cakes. I don't really know what to call it. But because of that, whenever somebody in that group makes a purchase in Fate Grand Order and they get points, everybody else in the group also gets points. And you can use those points to get different gift cards, like you can get a GameStop gift card or a Starbucks gift card if that tickles your fancy. But I think the most likely outcome is that you're going to be using those for Google Play and iTunes gift cards, so then you can just get more quartz. So that is the first link in the description if that interests you at all, because I know this is going to be a heavy summoning period for a lot of people. So please take advantage of that. I'm partnered with them because I just think it's a good service to kind of give us some buying power back from the big corporation. It gives us a little bit of an edge in this fight. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and start talking about Super Orion, who is just pretty good overall. He's just an absolute insane servant. Let's start off by looking at his hits, which, I mean, you're going to be seeing these a lot because Super Orion is a very unique servant in that he's one of the very few servants that gets the majority of his damage from his face cards because he has a non-damaging NP. Because usually when a servant has a non-damaging NP, they're a support type servant in some capacity. But Super Orion says, my non-damaging NP is to make me hit like a freight train going at the speed of light, crashing into a wall of kittens. The level of destruction is unprecedented for the game. And unlike some other servants like, say, Jacqueline Hyde or the Chinese Lancer that everybody forgets about, who also try to go into their face card damage, Super Orion actually does this really well, and the basis for a lot of this comes from his deck. He's an archer packing a triple buster deck because this guy wants to maximize on the amount of destruction that he's bringing to the enemy party. His star gen is quite low at 8%, and he's only packing one quick card with 3 hits, but honestly, who really cares? If you're trying to use Super Orion as a star gen of all things, you should probably go see a counselor and get yourself evaluated for being mentally insane. Because I have no idea who looks at Super Orion's kit and thinks that this is a star genning servant. So for all intents and purposes, ignore the quick card. It basically isn't even there. All you care about are the buster cards and that arts card. Because the arts card is actually quite good at 0.96% NP charge per attack with 3 hits on it. If you're able to get a crit on this arts card, you will refund a massive amount of your NP, if not the entirety of your NP, which is very important because the whole style of gameplay for Super Orion is to essentially get 2 stacks of your NP. And this arts card is very important in getting those stacks because unfortunately my boy is not packing a battery, but you're supposed to be using him as a solo servant, in which case you'll always have access to his arts card, so that's kind of how you're supposed to supplement him not having a battery. But this wouldn't be the ZTL channel if I didn't mention that 5-hit extra attack, which actually will be looking pretty nice in his Brave Chains, because a extra attack is a composite card if you did not know that gens NP, gen stars, and does big boy damage, and it's not really be genning a whole lot of stars with that 8% star gen, but with that 0.96% NP charge per attack and 5 hits on it, even though it's not able to crit, it will help supplement your NP gain just a little bit, but nobody really cares about all that. Let's go ahead and talk about the skills, because this is where the absolute mayhem begins. Now, you should really look at Super Orion's skills as kind of supplementary to his NP, because Super Orion's NP, like I was saying earlier, is really where a lot of his power comes from. The NP is what you want to get 2 stacks of, and once you get 2 stacks of the NP, you're pretty much off to the races. You can just destroy whatever you want, and there's not going to be very much in the game that can really stand against him. So when you look at these skills, even though they might look a little limited, just know they're just here to supplement the NP. So with skill 1, he's getting a Buster Mana Burst, which is a 50% Buster buff for 1 turn on a 5-turn cooldown that also brings a 50% damage mod against wild beast or demonic enemies for 1 turn, which means with that triple Buster deck, those Buster cards are going to be hitting extremely hard, and really does help with the massive amount of crit damage that he does get on his NP, and it makes those Buster cards look even better on the turn that you have this up. And it's literally just like, God forbid you encounter any wild beast or demonic enemy, because you are going to punt them into the next multiverse. Because even though these are only 2 50% values, do remember that in FGO, different damage types do multiply into each other. This is not just 50% buster damage being added into a 50% special damage mod. Those are multiplicative into each other. So already right there, you see a lot of damages being brought to the servant. Skill 2 is more of a utility skill, I would say, because it's giving him a guts that lasts for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown, and because he's a solo servant, this is very important. It was very important that as a solo servant, they gave him a way to keep himself alive and not just focus too much on the damage, especially because you may encounter some periods of downtime with Super Orion, depending on what fight you are going up against. Especially towards the beginning of trying to get a Super Orion solo going, it's going to take you at least 2 turns to get those 2 stacks of the NP going, and so having a way to keep himself alive is very crucial to getting this going, and this is almost the glue that holds the entire kit together, because it pretty much guarantees that you should be able to get those 2 stacks of NP going, as long as you play your cards right. Then it's giving him a 20% attack buff, and do remember, this is now multiplying into the Buster buff and the special damage mod if you're fighting somebody that fits under said special damage mod, and then it also gives him 20 stars to play around with, and this is pretty obviously like the skill you pop immediately. Like, they wanted to make it very obvious that you can just click this one right from the get-go and not have to worry about anything, because it'll guarantee that he stays alive long enough to start stacking his NP. It gives him an attack buff that lasts for 3 turns, and then it gives him stars to try to get those crits going, and you really want this to fall on his arts card, so you can just start off by getting some major arts crits and just start massively gassing up his NP. And then finally, there's his 3rd skill. If for whatever reason you're using him with other servants, because he does look pretty good with other people, if you want to have like double Koyanskaya to really just be like, you know what, screw trying to get the arts card, I'm just going to dump a 50% battery into you and just speed this process up. Or you're going to use him with like Merlin, Waver, something along those lines to maybe start getting him going initially in the fight. Then you want to put like Poster Girl on them, which if you don't know, maybe you're a newer player, Poster Girl is a very old CE that comes around sometime on raid up, and it's basically a CE that gives whoever it's equipped to a 3-turn taunt, so you can put it on servants that you want to buff somebody, and then since they have the taunt, they're more than likely to just get yeeted out of the battle, and it's really good to like pump and dump buff. So if you're using him in like these scenarios, this can be a very good skill, because it pretty much guarantees that he'll get all the stars, because you still want him getting all the stars for obvious reasons. That's where all of his damage is coming from. And then it gives him an on attack buff where basically whenever he attacks, he gets 100% buster crit damage for that turn whenever he attacks for 3 attacks for 3 turns. So again, those buster crits are really going to bite, because not only do they have just at least at base level, 100% crit damage, a 50% buster mana burst, and a 20% attack buff. But even if you just look at all of this, you would probably just say, like, this is just a solid servant. Like, this isn't enough to make him super broken. This would just make him a really good buster crit servant, but nothing too exceptional. It's the NP that takes Super Orion from just being really good to being a must-summon servant, one of the best servants in the game still to this day, even on the JP version of the game, because none of these effects are wasted. There's no, lowering enemy critical attack chance, nothing like that. Nothing is being wasted here. Nothing like just putting a weak 10% defensive down buff on the enemy. All of these buffs are really strong and very calculated to make Super Orion really, really good. First and foremost, he's gaining Ignore Invincibility for 3 turns, meaning that none of his damage is going to be wasted because the enemy cannot run, they cannot hide from his attacks. It doesn't matter if they're packing dodge or invincibility, they are getting curse-smacked by Super Orion. Then, depending on his NP level, he's either getting a 30% up to a 50% attack buff on top of the 20% that he's already giving on skill 2, meaning that he now has a really massive attack buff, multiplying into a buster mana burst, and then potentially also multiplying into a special damage mod buff. It actually gives a little bit of an incentive to go for higher copies of Super Orion, even though I think at NP1 you'll just be perfectly fine for most builds, because you're going to be double stacking this NP anyway, so that's going to be a 60% attack buff even at NP1 double stacked, plus skill 2 making it an 80% attack buff, which is still, again, pretty much going to be good enough for whoever you're going to bring him to fight. Then he gets 3 turns of debuff immunity, not like 3 hits of debuff immunity, 3 turns of debuff immunity. This is supposed to guarantee that Super Orion cannot be charmed, he cannot be stunned, they cannot hinder his damage. As soon as you get the NP off, he is clean for 3 turns to lay waste to the enemy party. Then, because his star gen is so low, he guaranteed gives himself 10 stars every turn for 3 turns, and this is supposed to help him pretty much guarantee the crit stars for himself, because now this, in conjunction with his Brave Chains, especially if he starts stacking this, it pretty much guarantees that he'll have enough stars to pretty much guarantee crits for all of his Brave Chains. And then finally, the Overcharge is the icing on the cake, because even at Overcharge level 1, he's giving himself the legendary 100% crit damage for 3 turns, no restrictions. And you guys, if you're a long-time viewer, you guys know that we talk about crit damage, and it's like usually a servant will get like 40 to 50% crit damage with no restrictions for 3 turns, and that's pretty good. If they get 100% crit damage, it's usually restricted in some way, like it's either hit-based or it only lasts for a turn. It's very rare for them to just give out 100% crit damage, and potentially even more if we're talking like 125%, even up all the way to 200% if you somehow get him to Overcharge level 5. It's just unprecedented for them to give that much crit damage away for free, no restrictions. Like, just get his NP. And then from there, I mean, you really just want to shoot again to get his NP off twice, and then just load up on his skills and obliterate whoever is trying to come at you, because Super Orion will definitely put them in their place. Hopefully a lot of you guys can also see why I've been like singing this guy's praises all year, just being like, he's definitely going to be a must-have servant. Although you can definitely get by without Super Orion. I know that I'm gassing him up, and I've been gassing him up all year, but do understand this is not like a Scotty or a Castoria situation where if you don't get Super Orion, you have to quit the game. He'll definitely make your life easier. I highly recommend that you summon for him because he is that good. But if you don't get him, it's not the end of the world. Not only does he come back next New Year's with Shiro Muramasa, but he's kind of like a win more for your account. He's really good for beginner accounts because he's pretty beginner friendly because he wants to solo everything, and he's really good at doing that. And he's very good at just kind of like bringing up that value and really strengthening up your box a lot. But even if you're an older player and you have supports to make him look good, again, even though he wants to be a solo servant, if you have some of those pieces, like say Guda Guda Poster Girl, where you can just kind of like pump and dump buffs onto him, he can look even more insane And at that point, you're kind of just fishing to do really big numbers, and it's obviously a lot of fun to do. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm expecting just a lot of praise for Super Orion in the comments. I mean, this is just one of those legendary servants in FGO. Everybody knows he's insanely good, although a fun, just unique fact that I'll leave you guys with, when Super Orion first came out on the JP version of the game, there were a lot of people, myself included, that didn't know if he was quite good. Like, we didn't really understand what to make of this servant. Like, we were like, he's good, but how good is he? And then it just took a little bit of using, and we were like, oh, never mind, this guy is insanely broken. Thankfully, because of Global's ability to just kind of see into the future and kind of see how good these servants are going to be, we already know this guy is insanely good, and again, highly advise you guys to summon for him. With all that being said, though, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace, late, guys.